This is Quigg and Cassius for Rifle TV in association with Macklin's Gym Marbella. We're in Hull here, press conference for Point of No Return. What's happening, Edward?
Right, son?
Yeah.
Good.
I had a good day yesterday.
With, what, in Hull?
Yeah.
Bad hotel we put you in, wasn't it?
I was trying to stress it wasn't you that put me in it.
No.
But I had a conversation with the person that deals with that.
Yeah.
It's alright, I don't mind. Listen, I'll sleep in my car.
Get a few bangs on the door at the early hours of the morning.
4 o'clock in the morning. It's alright. I think sometimes what you do is you put me in places like that just to remember where I came from.
Exactly. It's always good.
The streets.
The public school. You come from the streets about as much as me.
Right, let's talk about this show before anything else. Point of No Return, 2 huge fights. Also, actually, 3 huge fights, as in step up in class-wise for all 3 fighters. Luke Campbell, first of all, against Daniel Brizuela. Now, Brizuela said yesterday, I don't know if you saw them comments.
I saw that, yeah. Go on, you tell people what he said first.
He said that he thinks that Tommy Coyle's a stronger opponent than Luke Campbell is, but he hasn't faced Luke Campbell yet, so I suppose there's a question after the fight to determine who was the better. Yeah,
I just spoke to Brizuela about that. They truly believe that Coyle is the tougher fight. Brizuela is quite light for a lightweight, probably could make super feather, but Coyle is probably a bigger lightweight than Luke Campbell. Not in terms of size, obviously, if you see the two of them, but in terms of actual weight. I think Luke walks around probably at 9 stone 11, 9 stone 12, whereas Tommy probably walks around at 11 stone. Do you know what I mean? So I think then they realise they're not giving away as much weight. But the thing is with Luke Campbell, it's an unknown quantity, isn't it? We don't know how good he is. He could be outstanding, he could just be hyped. We know he's quality, but how good? And the answer is if he's not that good, then he'll get beat by Daniel Brizuela. Because Brizuela has been around. He's been in with some quality fighters. He's a good fighter. We saw against Tommy Coyle, clever fighter. And this is the acid test for Luke Campbell. And I'm so excited because, we have to grow these fighters, And sometimes you put them in fights where obviously you're going to win and it can get a little bit boring. But that's all part of the learning process. Unfortunately, it's something that all quality young fighters have to go through on their journey up. But now we're at the exciting stage where I can walk out of that change room and actually feel my heart beating and be concerned and be worried and be excited about the fight. And I'm really pleased Luke's there, sooner than expected. And I'm really excited about Campbell versus Brizuela. I think it's a really dangerous fight, but I think Luke's ready. I think he's done his apprenticeship, and it's going to be really interesting to see how he gets on against a very talented fighter in Brizuela. And someone, Brizuela, obviously we see quite a few South Americans over here, and generally they always give value for money. Brizuela's got a bit of pedigree. He's part of the big Olympic team with some quality fighters and grew up with the amateurs, with Matisse and those kind of guys. So he's got the pedigree. And you saw against Coyle, he's a quality fighter. So I'm buzzing for that fight. It's a really big fight for Luke Campbell.
Tommy Coyle versus Michael Scedes. That's what I think. Michael Scedes, I think even if people say he's a shot fighter, a shot Michael Scedes is still better than most.
He's definitely not a shot fighter. I mean, one thing we've got to make, listen, he's been sparring, he's been over for 7 weeks preparing for this fight in Manchester. I know people that have sparred with him. He's looking sharp, he's punching very, very hard. Of course he's not the fighter he was 4 or 5 years ago. That's just what happens when you get on in your career. But look at the people that he's mixed with. Casamayor, Juan Diaz, Robert Guerrero, Juan Manuel Marquez, even Kevin Mitchell, Ricky Burns. He's been at such a high level in the sport. And Tommy obviously hasn't. You'd probably say the toughest fight Tommy's had is Brizuela or Derry. So he's never been anywhere near this kind of level. And it's such a fascinating crossroads fight. I actually think Scedes is the favourite in this fight, to be honest, because Tommy's got to be really, really smart. I saw an article from Kevin Mitchell the other day, quote saying, if Tommy stands in front of Scedes and decides to have a war with him, he will get beat. And I think he might be right, and it's a worrying fight, because when there's 3,500 to 4,000 in the arena on Saturday, sold out, the atmosphere will be electric. How do you keep yourself disciplined when you're renowned for being a warrior. You're renowned for giving the public entertainment, and you talk up the fact that you love to have a war, and we know that Tommy Coyle loves to have a war. So how do you remain disciplined in a fight where you must? That's the fascinating thing. And if you do stand toe-to-toe, can he have it with Scedes? That's the difference. But don't worry about Michael Scedes in terms of, does he still have the desire, does he still have the fitness? Listen, he's got all of those, and he's looking sharp in sparring. And with all due respect to Tommy Coyle, this is not Michael Scedes against Miguel Vasquez, Terence Crawford. This is Michael Scedes against Tommy Coyle, who's still got plenty to prove at fringe world level. This is the perfect fight, providing Tommy Coyle can win. But again, a pure 50-50. I cannot call this fight either way.
Gavin McDonald against Vusi Minga on paper is definitely his hardest.
There's another one where I think Vusi Minga is the favourite, don't you? I mean, you'd have to say, obviously, his last fight was against Stuart Hall, a great fight. Hall did really well to beat him. You know, he's been the distance with Leo Santa Cruz. He's a quality, experienced fighter. I think 25-6 or something like that. Gavin McDonald's 11-0. Gavin McDonald's best wins was against Lee Wood. You know, he drew with Josh Whale last time out. This is a guy who had a really close fight with Stuart Hall for the world title, won an IBF eliminator, went 12 rounds with Leo Santa Cruz. It's a really risky fight, and listen, just in case it goes wrong, I didn't choose this fight. Their team said, what about Vusi Minga? I said, listen, if you're up for that, I would love to make that fight. And we made it. So it's a very, you know, if it's a classic fight and Gavin McDonald wins, I definitely made this fight. If it don't work out, then it was nothing to do with me at all.
That's fair enough. Anyway, this is going to be a great show in Hull.
Really looking forward to it.
Other local Hull talent.
Yeah, we've got Robbie Davis Jr. as well from Liverpool, one of our young light welterweights, quality young fighter. Sam Immamoon, obviously, who's very talented featherweight, and a load of other kids. We've got about 8 tickets left, I think, for the show.
8?
Yeah. Hoping to get a few dribs and drabs back from the fighters today, but apparently not. Tommy Coyle chasing on the heels of Josh Warrington as one of the biggest ticket sellers in the country. Done close to 1,000 himself.
I know you love a ticket seller.
Especially on his fruit stall.
You up for that later?
I'll do a little bit of that, yeah.
So you
Might surprise you, you know.
Listen, that'll be nothing to you, isn't it? A few strawberries. Right. Saturday night on Sky Sports. Last Saturday.
Yeah.
Gennady Golovkin destroyed Marco Antonio Rubio inside 2 rounds, and then the normal cries out for FROCH-GOLOVKIN comes out.
It's been such a frustrating period on Twitter, and I shouldn't respond as much as I do.
You've responded a lot this week.
But it's really frustrating because I want people to know the situation, and when people go to me, how can you say Golovkin's not pay-per-view? Look, FROCH-GOLOVKIN over here, of course it's pay-per-view. He's not pay-per-view on HBO. And then people go, bollocks, you're talking rubbish. No, that's what we were told by HBO. I talk to Tom Loeffler all the time. You know, they want to box on Sky Sports because they see a future with a Froch fight. And there may be a future with that fight. It's a horrendous fight for every middleweight or super middleweight in the division. And we'll come back to that later. But the situation is the Chavez fight has been approved in principle by HBO to be pay-per-view. When any discussions have been had with HBO regarding Golovkin and Froch, it's not a pay-per-view. So the money is restricted probably on the same kind of terms as a DeGALE fight or a Kessler fight. And as much as I don't want to dishearten fans, you've got a simple question to ask yourself. Do you want to fight James DeGALE or Mikhail Kessler for that much money, or do you want to fight Gennady Golovkin for that much money? You make the call. And the frustrating thing is, people go to me, yeah, but do it for the fans, and does he think he's a warrior? And I think that, Carl Froch probably has done more for the fans than potentially any boxer in British boxing. It doesn't mean you take a fight and you make a crazy decision. And I don't want to dishearten fans, but it comes a lot down to common sense and the value of a certain fight. Carl Froch against Gennady Golovkin is an absolute war, right? It would be one of the most brutal fights I think you could ever make. So you've got to be rewarded for that kind of fight in an outrageous way, in my opinion. Okay. Now, when people say to me, "Yeah, but why is Golovkin against Froch not pay-per-view on HBO?" I don't make those decisions. If you ask me from a business sense, I guess one's from Kazakhstan, one's from the UK. They're still building Golovkin over there. They've got a lot of work to do. Well, why is Chavez? Well, the answer is because he does big numbers, particularly in Mexico. He's hugely popular, as we know. So if I can make the Chavez fight for maybe double the money of a Golovkin fight, surely you have to expect me to try and make that fight rather than the Golovkin fight. And don't get me wrong, as a fan, I would love to see Golovkin Froch. And don't rule it out. Now, I speak to Carl virtually every day, and we laugh and joke about this fight. And actually, you know, I think after the fight, we were having a little bit of banter on the messages. But you've got to understand, Carl Froch, I think he's earned the right to, one, choose his next opponent, but two, also get the respect that he don't really duck people. Do you know what I mean? He knows, like, and he'll have a joke.
Especially a fighter that's not actually in his weight category.
Well, this is the other thing that will come on. You know, I mean, look, read that last tweet. You can read. I won't show it on camera, but read that out loud. The last text.
The last text
down the bottom.
Come on, don't bottle it. The public want you versus Triple G.
Exactly. That's the Carl. And he just phoned me out. He says, "What are you trying to do to me?" But he says to me, you know, we had conversations, and this is like insight for you guys, where he said to me, "Do you think he's that good?" And I said, "I don't know." And he said, "What if it's all hype and like actually people are just afraid of getting hit by him?" And you know, we were sort of debating if he's, and obviously you see now he is a quality fighter. His footwork's fantastic. But, and this is not Golovkin's fault, by the way, let's break down his opponents. You know, Rubio. I mean, I'd put a lot of fighters. I'd put John Ryder in with Rubio. I mean, you know, no disrespect to Rubio, but he's shot one. You know, Adama, is it? You know, the Jap that he fought, Curtis Stevens, who just got beat by Hassan Adam, Matthew Macklin, who's operated at world level but not won a world title, Daniel Gill, who Darren Barker beat. And I know he's demolishing these guys, but until he steps up to that next level, the problem is he would step up to that next level like that. But the problem comes down to the same problem as Carl Froch. There isn't yet the money for the, if you like, the A-side fighters to say, yeah, I'll have that. Do you understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Like, I'm talking about Canelo, Cotto, even throw Froch in that mix, throw Chavez in that mix. Because Chavez is probably going, well, I can probably make similar money fighting Froch for two super middleweight titles. And I think that might be a little bit easier, 37-year-old, than fighting Golovkin. You know, and Cotto's probably saying, well, you know, how much money are you going to pay me fighting Golovkin? Well, you know, this is the right, you know. So you've got to weigh it all up. But ultimately, and this applies to Carl Froch as well, if there was huge money on the table to fight Golovkin, and say even HBO pay-per-view, that definitely is a consideration. We know how dangerous it is, but Froch is half a lunatic anyway. And he's not sitting at home under his sheet hiding from Golovkin. He's actually quite excited about the prospect. But the answer is, as always, pay me the money, you might just get the fight.
Right, let's just get some clarity on a certain few things. Where are you at the moment with Froch Chavez Jr.?
It's a complicated situation with Chavez and Top Rank, and you know, obviously they've got a lot to sort out. The fight with us and Top Rank was agreed in principle, and terms agreed in principle, way back, probably in June or July. Obviously hasn't fought since then. Obviously he's got this promotional dispute going on, which I don't know too much about, but it appears he has one fight left with Top Rank. Again, I don't know the situation regarding that. And Top Rank want him to fight Carl Froch. I think in terms of the options available to Chavez, Carl Froch is probably his number one choice. I just think those two need to sort out the way forward, and then I'm pretty sure it will get made. The good news for Carl Froch is he's not in a rush to make his mind up in terms of what he's going to do. So if he has to wait another month to get a result, he'll do it. Do you understand what I'm saying? he's not. Look, I've got over 30 fighters, and 99% of them are phoning me up asking when I'm out next. Carl Froch isn't. He's happy to relax. He can fight in January. He can fight in March. He can fight in the summer. He's not bothered. He just wants the right fight for him. And by the right fight, I'm not talking about the right fight in terms of opponent. I'm talking about the right fight that puts fire in his belly and gets him excited, because he's made mistakes before taking fights or having the mentality that he just wasn't up for. And I'd hate him to throw away everything he's achieved in his career in a fight that doesn't just, do you understand what I'm saying? Froch is not the most talented technically, but when his back's against the wall, and when he's motivated, and when he's trained his nuts off for 14 weeks, he's a very tough man to beat. And he needs that mentality going into a fight. And there's certain fights out there that I'm not sure will give him that mentality.
Where does this leave James DeGALE?
Good question. Well, the situation there is...
Do I get tickets for that?
Very good. Is quite simple. Carl Froch, on the 31st of December, will receive a letter from the IBF saying you've got 28 days to negotiate with Carl Froch, or there'll be purse bids. Okay? So Carl Froch can fight a voluntary up until 31st of December. Okay? After that, neither James DeGALE or Carl Froch are allowed to fight anybody else. Carl for the IBF title or James in any other fight, otherwise they'll lose their position. Unless Carl Froch applies for an exception, which we know about, we've discussed before, to have a voluntary in January, February, whenever. Because he's waited quite a long time, if the voluntary is in January, my gut feeling is the IBF might say, okay, fair enough. If it's in March or April, they may turn around and say, sorry, you had your chance to have your voluntary, now you've got to face your mandatory. He has had back-to-back mandatories, so I think he'll get a little bit of leniency. What this comes down to is the Chavez fight. If the Chavez fight is made for March, April, or whenever, it's likely you will see Carl Froch vacate the IBF title to take that fight. Okay? If it's in January, he'll either ask for an exception, whereas if it's granted, the winner will have to fight James DeGALE within 90 days, or he'll vacate the IBF title and just defend the WBA, on which James DeGALE will fight the next available contender. Okay? Now, as it happens, James DeGALE is fighting Periban on November 22nd, so if he was to fight for the vacant title in March or April, or even the winner of Chavez in April, May, it's not too bad for him from a time perspective, because he's got a big fight in November. Do you understand what I'm saying? So, where does it leave James DeGALE? Answer, in a really good position, because James DeGale's got probably 3 outcomes right now. Froch against Chavez doesn't happen, and then Froch turns around and goes, alright DeGALE, you smash Periban up, you raised your profile a little bit, let's have it in January. Number 2, Carl Froch vacates his title and James DeGALE fights for a vacant title early in the year.
It'll be against Ramirez?
Probably Ramirez, it looks like the way the rankings will work out. Or number 3, fight in November, go to Vegas and watch the fight on January the 31st and have to fight the winner within 90 days. So he's in a great position, and obviously even better because he's on a huge show in a big fight against Periban on November 22nd. So I think that James is in a good spot. And listen, if he gets a vacant title, Ramirez is a very, very tough fight. 24-5-0 southpaw, 21 knockouts. But win that, and maybe you fight the winner of Froch against DeGALE. Froch against Chavez at Wembley in summer. So DeGale's sitting pretty, really.
Give me a 1 to 10 chance of Froch DeGALE happening at the O2 the last day of January.
10 being most likely.
Most likely, yeah.
7.
So still a possibility.
I think if the Chavez fight doesn't happen, Carl Froch has got a couple of options: fight James DeGALE or retire. Because I don't think there's any other fights out. That really,
yeah.
Or wait. Waiting's the other option. Might wait till the summer. I know. Everybody wants to see Froch back in action. And one other thing to clear up as well, while we're on the IBF, is that people coming on to me this week saying, "Oh, Thurman against Bundu in a final eliminator for the IBF." It's not. I spoke to Lindsay Tucker last night. the IBF ordered Leonard Bundu against Ianat Jojo Dan in a final eliminator. Bundu has pulled out of that to fight Thurman for the WBA interim title. The new final eliminator is now Ianat Jojo Dan against Kevin Bizier from Canada, who they've fought before in a really good fight, and now they're fighting again. The winner of that will be Kell Brook's mandatory. Kell Brook can have a voluntary up until March the 19th, and then he must fight his mandatory. So our choices are have a voluntary on March the 7th, which is the date we're going at Sheffield Arena, Kell Brook, or just fight the winner of that on March the 7th to free up the chance to fight whoever we want in the summer.
Amir Khan.
Let's hope so. But I mean, once Amir Khan realises, and he may get the Mayweather fight, you know my opinion on that, I don't believe he'll get it. But if he doesn't, surely he has to fight Kell Brook. I mean, he's fighting a guy next, Devon Alexander, who Sean Porter basically schooled, right? And Kell Brook basically schooled Sean Porter. So, come on, give the public what they want. You know, I don't know what Khan will make for the Alexander fight. Say $1.5 million. He'll make probably 3 times that to fight Kell Brook.
Yeah, but obviously
he's Khan Brook. I mean, like,
yeah, no, but Khan obviously has to fight this year, and that's his opponent.
No, that's fine. I don't mind. I just don't like. It's half a risky fight with 0 reward. I mean, he'll beat Alexander, you know, but
could have fought him for a world title last year.
Huh?
Could have fought him for the world title last year.
I just think it's, you know, listen, it's still a quality fight between 2 quality fighters, but it's not really.
It's actually quite a good card, isn't it? They're putting together at the Mandalay Bay. It's like Bundu, Thurman, and then Charlo against Andrade.
I'm quite surprised. I mean, Charlo against Andrade, I'm not too sure about, but I'm quite surprised at Bundu. I mean, I think he's signed with Heyman now. He's taking the Thurman fight. I mean, he's going to get a load of money, but he's too old to mix it with Thurman, and you'll see that. But he would have, in my opinion, he would have beat Jojo Dan, and he could have fought Kell for the world title. But listen, you've got to take what's put in front of you at the time, and he'll be getting a lot of money to fight Thurman. But I think Thurman will do a number on him.
Right, regarding the November 22nd show, it's been announced earlier on that Scott Quigg will fight Hidenori Itaki from Japan, ranked number 3 with the IBF, 10 with the WBO. For the box rec nutters out there, ranks number 8, I believe.
Very good, Coogan. Done your research.
I did a little research when you told me last night. Talk to me about it.
Yeah, it's a good fight. I mean, Itaki, listen, there's a lot of talented Japs out there. Shingo Wake was in the mix as well. He'd done his ankle. Itaki's ranked 1 behind him in the world, 22-1. Exciting. So 3 in the IBF, 8 in box rec, which, you know, is not an official ranking, I suppose, but people do look at it. Probably the toughest fight for Scott Quigg yet, I think, in his career. It's a good fight. I'm sure we'll get the usual stick because it's not Carl Frampton, but I don't think people can moan about that fight. It's a credible fight, and you know, a tough fight for Scott. And really, you know, listen, you look at his last 3 opponents. De Silva was a gimme because that was 4 weeks after the fight against Salinas. Munyai was a tough fight, but because he demolished him, probably didn't get the credit he deserved. And Jamoy had already operated at a good level, but Quigg just breezed through him. So this is a fight now, a big step up for Scott Quigg, and much more credible than the last 3 opponents. But of course, we've got in our mind what we want to do, and talks are ongoing with Carl Frampton, and we hope we can get that fight made. If we don't, then Scott will probably have to fight in the spring, summer. We're in deep talks with Martinez's camp, Kiko Martinez. I like that fight, and we're open to the Galahad fight as well. You know, and I've stressed that before, but I have the responsibilities of my fighter. And one thing I'm not doing is I'm not going to be committing to a pipe dream in Dubai, where I've seen 1 million fights touted for Dubai, and I don't think one of them's ever happened. So I'm not wasting Scott Quigg's time in that respect.
Why couldn't you have made then a counter offer for Quigg to fight Galahad on the 22nd?
Because that's a big fight with big purses, and then, to be quite honest with you, the numbers don't really add up for the November 22nd show. We've got so many fights on, another big name to be added tomorrow as well, big announcement tomorrow. So, you know, I like the Galahad fight, don't get me wrong. It wouldn't have been possible to make it for the 22nd. And regardless of what they say, I don't actually believe. I mean, I spoke to his manager at length, Dominic Ingle, and you know, I don't believe they would have taken the fight on the 22nd. But it wasn't really part of our plans anyway. And I'd quite like that fight, if the Frampton fight doesn't happen, to be a standalone at the MEN, because it can be built into a big fight.
You talk about Kiko Martinez. Is there an argument? Is there any sense in Scott Quigg fighting an opponent that Carl Frampton's already beaten twice?
I think that let's look at it, right. We all know what we want to do. We want to fight Carl Frampton, just like Kell Brook wants to fight Amir Khan. But it looks likely, you know, after my conversations with Jake McGuigan and Blaine McGuigan, that he'll fight Avalos probably in February. So that fight probably won't be available to us till the summer. Not a problem. And this is like, you know, with the Scott Quigg situation, that's why we're fighting so frequently, but now we step up and fight Ataki, who's a quality fighter. We'll go again, if we have to, in February or March. I think Kiko Martinez has proved himself as a credible opponent. You know, he had a close fight with Frampton the first time round when Carl stopped him. Second fight with Frampton was a great performance from Carl, won it wider. Stopped Romero in America to win the title, defended against Matthew Baylor, knocked, you know, so he's a credible. I think we have to look at, if we can't get Frampton for the spring, we have to look at Martinez, we have to look at Kid Galahad, definitely. But again, no disrespect to Kid Galahad. Listen, I know Kid Galahad really well, we have a good laugh. I'll probably consider him as a mate of mine. He ain't fought anybody. And, you know, it's all very well saying this and that. Fight someone decent. Fight Salinas. Fight Kiko Martinez yourself. You know, I mean, the level of opposition he's facing is, like, horrific. Don't get me wrong, he's a quality fighter, by the way. And stylistically, he's not great to fight, as a lot of those fighters aren't. And sometimes those fighters, particularly out of the Ingle camp, have struggled to get the big fights because of their style. And they are awkward. Look at Errol Bomber Graham. He probably would have stood Chris Eubank and Nigel Benn on their heads the same night back in the day. Look at Junior Witter. Awful to watch. You know. And Kid Galahad ain't great to watch either. But if he keeps spouting his mouth off and calling out fights, which is what he's got to do to get the profile, it will probably happen. And good luck to him, because this is what you've got to do. You've got to make noise, haven't you? I mean, Kid Galahad, let's be honest, he doesn't really feel a leisure centre, right, at the moment. In the right fight, I'm sure he will. But the bottom line is, he's got to make noise, and that's what he's doing. And by the way, I stress, he's a good fighter. I'm not mugging him off here. I'm telling you, he's a good fighter. But ultimately, like, put him on at Ponds Forge without Adam Etches, and there's more people going swimming. You know what I mean? So that's why he needs the Scott Quigg fight. He needs the Carl Frampton fight. And one day he'll get him.
Okay.
And by the way, Scott Quigg will eat him for breakfast. But that's another story.
Okay.
And I stress again, I like Kid Galahad. And if you're watching Bazza, nice one, son.
Alright, just finally, before this press conference starts, Tyson Fury was in absolute overdrive yesterday. Said that he wants to fight Anthony Joshua in December. Now, I'm assuming that isn't possible for December.
Well, Joshua's fighting Michael Sprott on November 22nd, and Fury is fighting Derek Chisora, if that happens. He's fallen through a few times, as is his last couple of fights, on the 29th. So I think December's probably not going to happen. And again, if you've got a fight of that magnitude, you're not going to like have a fight and then plan it for a week after or 2 weeks after. What you're seeing there is a similar situation to Kid Galahad, and it's fascinating for Anthony Joshua. All of a sudden, Joshua's the money. Joshua's the standout in the division. David Price wants to fight him. Tyson Fury wants to fight him. Eddie Chambers wants to fight him. They're not stupid. They know the future is in the division. They know who is the future star, the box office star in Great Britain, and that's Anthony Joshua. Joshua against Fury, providing he can beat Chisora if that fight happens, is a huge fight.
Would you make that in his next fight? You said you'd sit down with him.
And listen, let's go back to what I've said, by the way. In my opinion, Anthony Joshua, and judging by the responses to Tyson Fury's tweets, 99% of the people think this as well, Anthony Joshua would destroy Tyson Fury. I'm not so sure about how. I mean, it's fascinating, isn't it?
I don't agree 99% of people.
Coogan, read the responses. I was just going through it last night. I mean, it was unbelievable. It was 1 in 100 saying no, actually. And by the way, it's fascinating, isn't it, that just after 9 fights, people think Joshua can beat the entire heavyweight division. That I don't go along with that. I actually think the Fury fight is a very risky fight for Anthony Joshua because of the stages they're at in their career. I believe, in my heart of hearts, that Joshua destroys Fury, Price and Chisora right now. Doesn't mean I'm going to make the fight in December, but certainly in 2015, that fight is massively on the radar. And if Joshua keeps progressing like he's progressing, then it will come sooner rather than later. I spoke to Anthony last night. Listen, he'd fight him now, fight him tomorrow. You know, but ultimately you've got to do the right thing and progress him in the right way. But I understand what Tyson, and again, I want to make this point, Tyson Fury is a very good fighter. He's 26 years old. And another thing, I like Tyson Fury. I think he's great for the game, most of the time. Sometimes goes a little bit over the top. But look at the reaction that he caused last night on Twitter. It's great for boxing. And he's not stupid. He knows him against Joshua is a box office stadium fight. And that's what he's in the game for, to make as much money as possible. So he knows what he's doing, and he's a bright kid. But he's also had one fight in 18 months. And his last fight was watched by nobody on TV, and there was about 3,000 people in the arena. So he needs the big fights, and he needs a dance partner. You know, Fury against Chisora, we've seen the ticket sales it did in Manchester. It's just not a big fight. It's a decent fight. It's just, it doesn't grab the... Fury against Hay, we saw what it did. And Fury against Chisora, Fury against Joshua, we know that's huge as well. So, in answer to your question, yes, that fight will happen. I don't think it'll happen in December, but I believe it'll happen in 2015. But we've still got to do the right thing in the progression stakes for Anthony Joshua. And just because he'd beat them now, doesn't mean you just sling him in with them now. I've still got to grow him. I've got to grow him all over the country. I want to box him in Leeds. I want to box him in Newcastle. I want to go back to Scotland. But there'll come a time where those fights are inevitable. And because of his progression at the moment and the rate that he's moving, that time will be sooner rather than later.
Okay. Finally, when are you going to announce the name to be added on the 22nd?
Tomorrow, big name, one of the biggest in British boxing at the moment, will be on the 22nd bill. And listen, I know there's the debate, will I buy it, will I not buy it, is it pay-per-view, is it not pay-per-view? You know, you're talking about Nathan Cleverly against Tony Bellew 2. You're talking about James DeGALE against Periban, Joshua against Sprott, Quigg against Ataki, Callum Smith against Sesloka, McDonald against Ramos, this other kid on the bill, which we'll announce tomorrow, and then another fight also added. This is a huge, huge bill. And you know, if you bought a ticket when you come out, you've absolutely had it off, because you didn't know it was going to end up with this, with DeGALE and Periban and this other name added tomorrow, and you know, so it's a big night. And listen, people will say, oh yeah, but is it as big as this one? I want as many big shows as possible all over the country. Great that Warren's doing a big show in London. I hope it happens. I hope the fights hold up, because it's great. And I don't really care whether you like me or you don't. One thing you can't deny is, since I've been around, British boxing's got better. Not just because of what I've done, because I've kicked everybody else up the arse for the dross that they were doing before, and now the other promoters are involved with and doing good shows. The show on the 29th in London is a really good show. The show in Monte Carlo on Saturday is a really good show. You've got Martin Murray, you've got Stuart Hall in a world title. Brilliant. But all I've done is given everyone a kick up the arse. I'll do some good things, I'll do some bad things. But we made it interesting. It's only just beginning.
Alright, what's the time?
We're ready for the press.
It's 1 o'clock, bang on. Eddie Hearn,
all that talk, really, it's got me rumbled for this presser. Let's do it.
Go and do it. Strawberry seller.